Hello,
Hello. My name is
Hello.
Xavier. I use they, them pronouns.
My name is
My name is Zet. My name is Ben. I use he, him pronouns.
my name's Henry, and I use he/him pronouns. And we are Model UN.
Big globe.
Yeah. And today we're going to be discussing editing and how both the films Meshes of the Afternoon and Breathless use editing to create new meanings. So
Uh, True to our
yeah,
viewing order, I suggest we begin with Meshes of the Afternoon, which is
that's
really
the one we saw.
what paves the way for the modern experimental horror films you see today. And even without any original soundtrack or high quality cameras or even color, it provides a very, very captivating watch. Um, you'll see many jump cuts that we'll get into later. You'll see many wide shots, many close ups, and even without, of course, any dialogue either. The editing does everything you need a film. The editing conveys everything that you need a film to convey. So, are there any moments, first off, that you guys want to begin with that really signify the editing style and what it did for this film?
Yeah, I mean that scene with the key turning into the knife. I think that really shows how the editing makes us while watching this movie really question everything that's being shown to us and what is really there and what is even really going on. Um, and it just adds this complete level of surrealness and confusion that's super cool.
Yeah, I mean that was a scene I was also going to mention, but just in general, like the fact that the cuts in the movie are so frantic and quick, and like you'll see something, and just like the moment you begin to start to understand it, it will cut to something else, and the movie moves faster than your brain will like allow you to process the information what's going on. So I think that that also played into the fact that we could never really truly understand any of it because it was so hectic and almost absurd in a way.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant, a brilliant method for the director because, as Henry mentioned, you are processing the events at the identical speed as the main character is. She's as confused as we are. And the jumping back and forth not only occurs within the first look in her reality, but with us too. The audience, we see what she sees. And you can see only her hand. You can see her switch in and out of what seems to be some sort of layered dream state. And the amount of symbolism that is focused, for example, the rose that the Grim Reaper with the mirror continuously puts, the rose is the only object that is continuously in the center of the shot. And it is also the only object that continuously remains after each jump and each snap from this reality to the other one. They make a big deal of the rose earlier as the Grim Reaper runs away with the rose, holding on to what seems to be the glue of all the realities together. And
Yeah.
as our protagonist chases her, or chases the Grim Reaper, as our protagonist runs, we see it from the window perspective rather than from the main character's perspective. We can only be as close as our mind is, if that makes sense, because it turns out that there's another jump cut. Our protagonist is watching herself go. It is a sort of cognitive purgatory. And what I feel that the editing really does there, with the jump cuts between things she thinks are real, like the key turning into the knife, or when it comes to her being on different points of the stairs, once she sees the mirror, the Grim Reaper with the mirror face in her house, I think that the jumps between reality cause something that I see in a lot of modern experimental horror films, that loose ends. There is nothing more unnerving, more disturbing, and more confusing and fascinating than questions that don't have answers. I rambled a little, but do you guys have anything to sort of add to that? Like how that sort of the editing style gives that sort of perception that there are so many things we just don't know about this experience?
Yeah, I mean, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, also just sort of kind of took the words right out of my mouth, because we, like, again, there's nothing more unnerving and disturbing than seeing what's on screen and not understanding it, and that's just across like all levels of film. Like we just feel it's like it's almost uncanny, almost that we just cannot quite figure out, like we're just as lost as she is. I think that's just important to note, that if the editing hadn't been that frantic or that loose like that, then that effect wouldn't have been made at all. And I just found that the editing really, it really,
exactly.
the two, you needed that type of editing for this type of film.
Exactly. That narrative is seen in so many modern experimental horror films, and the editing is really what brings the narrative to life, what really brings that effect, as you said, Henry, to life. The effect of questions without answers being the most unnerving part of the whole film. Xavier, you want that?
I mean, that was pretty much what I was gonna say. Just like, I think also just like the pacing of it, and just like how abrupt each cut is. It's just like going back and forth, back and forth. It's just like there's so much going on, and you want to understand all of it, and you're just not gonna get even close. And it just like you were saying, such a level of unnervousness and just like stress almost. Like you don't know what's coming next. You don't even know what happened before. The whole thing is,
and neither does she.
Yeah.
And neither does she. You have to figure it out. You have to figure out every meaning of everything. Because at the very end, when it seems like she's starting to find the answer and her husband or so returns, she snaps once again, sees herself, and commits suicide by breaking the mirror. Every meaning is up to you, because the character gives you nothing, but the editing shows you how everything connects together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I was just going to add that since there's no dialogue, the editing plays a much more important role than it usually would in films that have dialogue, because you don't have that sort of extra sensory thing that you're looking out for. Then you start to notice these more things about editing, and then but I just think that the editing became more crucial in a film like this. It becomes more of a focal point.
Let's pivot to a film with genius dialogue and lots of sound, and just an absolutely revolutionary piece, Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless. Now, the editing in that particular film, what were some of the takeaways you guys had initially?
I mean, so for me, first off, I think both movies or both films like use this editing to make you really focus on not just the narrative, but kind of like what the film is trying to say about the characters or just its purpose. I think the fact that the editing in this is so abrupt and confusing, and at most times very strangely placed, like kind of makes you focus on the fact that Michelle or Michael, and Patricia too, are kind of like out of reality. Like they don't work with the way the world should. Like, I mean, we see Michael, he murders the cop, and then he's running in the field, and then it immediately just jump cuts to him in Paris, like hanging out. And the whole time you're like, wait, what? Hold on. Like, what is the time in this?
Yeah.
What is even happening? But it really shows that like Michael is not in reality with himself. He thinks he's this big tough guy gangster, and he's really just like a wannabe
petty criminal.
Yeah, exactly. He
Yeah.
doesn't see his own reality, and I think the film tries to mirror that.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to talk about like the sense of time too, in that like feels like every scene one after the other feels like we're just constantly missing certain parts of the story. You know, like be one scene and then the next will just be something completely well, not completely different, but like we'll be in a completely different mindset. It just feels like, especially as far as editing goes, it's like very quick, and you don't really have time to like figure out what's happening. You're just sort of, oh, this is happening now. Now this is a scene, and then oh, this next scene, this is also happening now. And you just have to sort of create the narrative as you go along. It's not as frantic as Message of the Afternoon, but I still found myself struggling to keep up with the story. Not to the extent of the short film, but I still find myself sort of lost at certain points.
I think I agree with the two of you 100%. I honestly think that one of the ideas I got is that the way we're seeing these events is the way Michelle, or Michael, of course, is seeing them too. How abruptly it was when he shot the cop, that is probably as abrupt as it felt for him. It was an impulse, very stupid. It is heavily implied that he had never murdered anybody.
Mm-hmm.
He's always so suave, thinking one step ahead. He's even talking, while the cop's even chasing him, he's like talking about the countryside. He's riding in a stolen car for the entire part of the first movie. And he didn't even care until the cop followed him once he's trying to change the engine. When he abruptly shoots him and cuts back to Paris, it seems as if he just blacked out.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily like fell asleep. I mean, like something took over. He got very scared. He shoots him, he runs, and he's back in Paris because that's all he ever wanted to get to. Nothing else is important to him. He buries it in his mind. He remembers he shot the cop. It doesn't really need to remember how he got back, just because of who he is.
Yeah.
He kind of just drifts, goes along.
I think that's fully right. I mean, yeah, I've had like adrenaline rushes before from stressful events, and then like it ends and I'm like, what did I even do during that time period? It really does feel like he just freaked out and was like, I'm just gonna run until I get to Paris.
Yeah, I think that's the meaning, at least I gathered from the editing, from that editing choice of the very quick snap. Because we're in the car with him for so long. He's in a stolen car. This is normal to him. This is grand theft. This is auto theft. He is stealing a car. This is years in prison. He's fine. He's talking to us like, oh, the countryside is so beautiful. But in that moment, that he sort of freaks out and accidentally kills the cop, which ends up being the biggest underlying plot point of the entire movie, as the rest of it revolves around him, on the lam in Paris. And even then, when he's on the lam, it's never really this abrupt or never really this far away. Because when he runs away, I remember they zoomed all the way out, as if he's running away from something so unbelievable, something so crazy. He never would have thought that he was capable of something like that. I think that's the meaning that was intended by Godard in that first scene.
For sure. And I mean, even when like he shoots the cop, you get a close up of a gun. You don't even necessarily know whose gun it is, and all you hear is a bang, and then you finally see the cop fall. There's a level of uncertainty in that scene too, just like in Meshes almost. Like I remember watching it just being like, who just got shot? Well, and we see it, but it's not like it's pretty much fast paced, just like the way he's thinking in the moment. Just close up of gun, someone dies. What do you
What do you
guys?
guys think about the disconnect between sorry about of the disconnect between what Michelle thinks is going on versus what is actually going on? And I mean, like, when he's like reading a newspaper in Paris, meanwhile the inspectors are after him, where he's sort of just relaxing in a building where people are looking for him. What do you guys think that the editing style of that whole like sort of cat and mouse chase really, I guess, gave the new light or new meaning to any of you guys? For me, I think it was just an illusion, like an allusion to just how big Paris is, because in most of the chase sequences, it's very, very zoomed out. Michelle's, bumping his way through a crowd. He sees them, looks over his shoulder, makes one turn, and the cops lose him. I think what's going on in Michelle's mind is so huge, and there's so many moving parts, just like the city of Paris, that it is almost impossible to keep up with one thing. That's why all the jump cuts during important scenes happen, or at least that's what I like to think is going on inside Michelle's head.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I never thought of, Paris in general as a metaphor for like Michelle's head and headspace during all of this. But if you think about it, like maybe I'm going off on a weird tangent here, but as they zoom out, maybe we're sort of getting a look at how he's both trying to escape from the police, but also trying to escape from inside of his head. I mean, maybe that's stretching it a bit, but I feel like the director wouldn't have given us this sense of like largeness, size, scale, scope if it wasn't to like represent something that was,
bigger than just Michelle
going on. Yeah, I feel like it was trying to portray something more going on. I'll come back to this point, but I just thought of this now. But that's the start of something. Just never thought of it that way.
What do you guys think of the like jump cuts in conversations specifically? Because they're constantly breaking the 30-degree rule like all the time in this movie.
Yeah, no, Michelle plays by his own. If that isn't a metaphor for Michelle playing by his own rules, I don't know what is. Yeah. He's not even following the character rules that a movie does. And that's so brilliant on Godard's part, that you designed a character who's a criminal, but he's so just in his own head, in his own world. He plays by no one's rules of his own, breaking the 30-degree rule as often as he does. And even sort of blacking out when things aren't important, and not even the audience can see. Like, for example, when he is talking in that hotel room for maybe half an hour, when he's talking to Patricia about love, and keeps asking, have sex with me, he keeps sort of, asking that.
Yeah.
When he eventually does, we don't see any of that. We don't even see her say yes. It just cuts to them in bed after they've done it. I think
that was another jump cut I was going to talk about, was the one from the time where he asked her to the morning. I was like, what happened? But continue. That was one there.
I think Michelle's character is so fascinating. It's really like, and from your earlier point, Henry, that it's all in his head, or at least a lot of it is metaphors for what goes on in his head. I think if there's one thing that keeps him grounded, it's smoking cigarettes.
Oh yeah.
Because he's always doing that. that might be the meaning of cigarettes. And actually, a lot of people do smoke just for clarity's sake, not just for glamour or for style. It usually helps them clear their head, or maybe gives them a sense of calm, especially during a moment when you're wanted by police for murder, I guess. But yeah, Michel is always pulling out these cigarettes and lighting them up, no matter where he is.
I think that also speaks to like him. I don't know if like insecure is the right word, but like it feels like he's definitely putting on this persona and like trying to hide some part of him, and the cigarettes are part of the persona. So if he doesn't always have a cigarette in his mouth, he's not that identity that he wants to be. That's how I read it. Because Michel to me seems like a deeply insecure man, who's trying to like just be something he's absolutely not, and pretty bad at.
Yeah. I think the moving parts in his mind that he uses cigarettes to either, block and like sort of show people, hey, I'm all right, I'm chilling. There's not a million things tearing me up. There's not a trip to Rome. There's not a manhunt that I'm on. There's not a relationship I'm trying to build with this girl. There's not money I'm trying to get back. There's all this really crazy stuff going on in Michel's life. But no matter what he's tackling, what issue he's going up against, or who he's talking to, he's always smoking every time. And that might just be the culture. But I feel like with Michel, it might be a little bit more than that, just because of the way his character is. Because if it really is by the culture, if it really is, oh, it's the 1960s in Paris, you're going to be smoking. Michel wouldn't follow that rule. He follows no rules. He doesn't even follow the law at all.
No.
I think that the editing around the close-up shots too, you can see Michel in such a vulnerable place when he's talking with Patricia.
Yeah.
Versus when he's, I don't know, like swindling somebody for like the sandwich, where he's like, yeah, I gotta go get money before, or I gotta go get a newspaper. I'll pay you back for this cup of coffee and sandwich or something. Or when he even like steals the car at the very beginning. I feel like the character of Michel is so well put together, not just from dialogue, but from the editing, from the cinematography, that it gives a whole new meaning to his persona and his role in this movie.
Yeah. I think it also does the same thing for Patricia, honestly, too. Because thinking about that, like there's that scene where she's on like a date, or it's something for her job that like seems like a date. And this guy starts telling this story, and it just keeps jump cutting, like breaking the 30-degree rule again. But for him, I think it does a different thing than for Michel, because to me, that scene meant Patricia bored out of her mind by this man. Time is flying by. It feels like this story has been going on forever because of these cuts. Even though it is like following a cohesive narrative, the cuts make it seem like it's just been going on forever, and Patricia's bored of this man because he's not Michel. He's not gonna like just do whatever the hell he wants.
There's not a lot going on with him. With Michel, there's tons going on with him.
Exactly. And that happens a lot with Patricia too, where she's in a conversation with some man, and like he's trying to tell her something, and it just keeps jump cutting. And I just got the sense like she's so bored. She wants that excitement. Yeah. That she wants that excitement from Michel so badly. Or is at least fascinated by him. I don't know. One of those.
I totally get that sense with Patricia too. She has lots of moments that sort of appear on the wavelength in the pattern of Michel. They definitely might be trying to show that these two characters are on the same wave until the very end.
Yeah.
Until Patricia has enough of it, and in that final scene, Michel becomes, I wouldn't even want to say human, but he kind of lets all these things going on in his head go and dies in the streets of Paris. Breathless, shot in the chest.
Yeah, and I mean, I think seeing like just that long shot of him stumbling in the street, like really, I think for the first time made me feel bad for Michelle. I mean, like it's really the only time he seems, like you said, human, is when he's stumbling and really struggling, and that long shot is like just so hyper focused on him and how he's gotten to the end. He can't go any further now. They've got him, and he now has to put away this facade and just deal with the fact that he's not going to make it, and that he's lost someone that he's been trying to get for so long.
Just like the character from Meshes of the Afternoon finally loses her grip on whatever she had in terms of reality and commits suicide.
Yeah,
I feel like the character arc is really well bolstered by the editing in both of these movies, amongst plenty of other aspects that we discussed. So yeah, that about does it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have been Model UN. See you all next week.
Until next time.
Next week. See you next time.